Welcome back, everybody. I hope you managed to have a nice break, managed to grab some lunch. We're kicking off the first panel session of the afternoon. And I think in this session, we're going to be kind of covering some of the ground that we covered this morning. We're going to pick up on some of those themes because the topic is all about the importance of partnerships and building trust to digitize government. One product and service at a time, we're saying, but really this session is all about how do you do this? And we've got some great people who are already doing this, so we're going to be kind of picking their brains on what's working well and what's not working so well, some of the challenges. We'll follow the same format because it's proving to work quite well, so I will do quick introductions to our fantastic speakers. I'll ask them a couple of questions myself, but then I'll throw it open to all of you for your questions. So please don't be shy. You know how it works now. Any question that you've got, put them to our great speakers. So we have on our panel Jonathan Finch, who is Director of Digital Experience in the White House. We've then got Betsy Bowman, who is Chief Transformation Officer at the Social Security Administration. We've got Raymond Holder, who is Vice President Digital Growth at Maximus, one of our knowledge partners. We've got Vigdís Jóhansdóttir, who's Chief Marketing Officer for Digital Iceland at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs over there in Iceland. And we've got Tom Reed, who is the Chief Executive Officer for the Government Digital Services in the UK, who you might have seen if you were here first thing, handing over the baton to Claire. So my first question, I think, just to set the scene in terms of how do we actually do digital transformation well, and what does that mean, and what does it involve? So I'm going to ask the same question to all of you, but from your experience, what is working well? What are the things people should be thinking about when they do transformation themselves, they're involved in product, and where are some of the biggest challenges at the moment?
Yeah, so I'll start with maybe two topics. For folks who attended the opening remarks this morning, you heard a question on how do we, as we're striving to be more digital first, make sure that we're not excluding folks by doing that. And I want to share a couple thoughts on that. Perhaps the obvious part of that is that whether it's due to access, whether it's due to choice, there will always be some folks who might not want to interact digitally or can't interact digitally. And we need to make sure we're not leaving them out. Perhaps the less obvious part of that equation is how do we handle it when folks are interacting across channels? So you might pick up the phone and start an interaction, then you might go to a website, then maybe you go to see or go to an in-person office. And I want to share a little bit of a personal story here that I think about quite a bit throughout this work. And within my immediate family, we had a loss in our family, and we were trying to figure out, what benefits might make sense for our family at that given point in time. My mom was back in Ohio. I was here in DC. She was picking up the phone. She went in person trying to get answers, and I, on my end, was trying to get answers via the web. I was trying to figure out what made sense for us. And it was just really disconnected. And it was hard to be in a different place and feel like I couldn't help her through that process. And it just comes down to how do we connect the experiences that are digital, and we're, of course, trying to make those better and better, but connect them with the experiences that aren't necessarily digital. And I think, the question was about challenges. The question fundamentally gets at how do we do digital service delivery across channels without leaving folks behind? And I'm sure we might get into that more as we get on, but I think that just has to be front and center when we think about this work.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jonathan. I said in an earlier session that I'd had similar experiences with my own parents. And I think what you say that disconnect between services and the lack of joined upness, but also people using different channels, a huge challenge, I think, for the public sector to solve some of those. I hope you will have some positives later in terms of what's working well.
We'll get there.
I did also ask about what's working well, but yeah. Betsy, come on to you.
Yeah, so first, thanks for having me here, and thanks for doing this. It's been amazing to connect with all of you. And I know this is a really international crowd, but I'm still going to ask the question, how many of you have a Social Security number? Raise your hand. Okay, so most of us. That's what we do. We serve people from birth to death and lots of everything in between, providing retirement and disability services, and we are a massive customer service organization. The challenge, one of the challenges we have now is we have a bit of a customer service crisis going on. Growing, 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 steady state, perfect straight line up and to the right in the number of people we're serving, and yet we have low staffing levels. Lots of reasons for that, but I think the opportunity we have is, one, to understand we're talking about customers that could be babies, they could be 110, and they could be anywhere in between, and oftentimes we're serving people at a really challenging point in their lives. So I think Jonathan said it really well, right? We have to really meet people where they are. We have a whole lot of paper going on at the Social Security Administration, and we're going more digital. So I think, there's lots of opportunity. I think there are things going really well. Things like we have a new website. One of my colleagues in the audience has driven that, has really started to turn us to be much more oriented toward what does that user need right now. Though some of the challenges, and we'll get into more of this, is, it's a very big ship. And turning a big ship is difficult, especially, as someone once said, when there are a lot of people with steering wheels. So I think there is a cultural element to the work that we do, as well as a technology element, and absolutely a customer experience element that we'll talk about more.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Betsy. So already that issue of inclusivity, we're serving everybody, have to make sure that whatever we do, those services are available to everybody, bringing in that issue of an aging population as well, and that's only going to put more pressure on our services. But then some of the plus sides, you say we are getting better at focusing on the user and understanding we need to meet people where they are in their lives. So thanks so much, Betsy. Raymond, over to you.
Sure. I tell you one thing that is, you asked about positives, things that have changed. I've seen across agencies over the last few years, if the last few years have taught us anything, is that you don't know what part of your organization has to be able to scale. Right? Whether it's the organization, it could be technology, it could be people, it could be a process. And one of the things that I've seen across agencies across the government is with the Customer Experience Executive Order and Cybersecurity Executive Order, agencies across the board are thinking about technology in a way that starts with the user first and the customer experience. And they were always kind of leading agencies that were ahead of it. So VA, Social Security Administration, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, for example, always thinking about people first. But now, even when you talk to executives from the State Department, Department of State, they say, hey, we're going to start with cybersecurity and we're going to improve the customer experience. We're going to do that for citizens. We're going to do that for workers. And that's one of the things that I think has really changed. And that's one of those areas where policy has a kind of impact, where it actually changes people's lives, because if you have agencies and people in the organizations thinking about that first, well, then you're going to do things differently, as opposed to trying to jam a specific technology or implement something, whether it's to go to the cloud or to get a mobile app or to upgrade your infrastructure. If you're starting with the end in mind, that's really been one of the biggest advantages I've seen over the last few years.
Brilliant, thanks, Raymond. So really that sense of the executive orders, the policy driving change.
Absolutely.
But as people are embracing that technology, they're doing exactly what was said in that first session, thinking about safety and about people as they go through those transformative programs. Thank you so much. Vigdís, what's going on in Iceland?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here. I think it's snowing back home. So it's so nice sitting in this cold auditorium with you guys. I don't know if many of you know this, but we are a fairly small country in the middle of the North Atlantic, but we are going places. We are currently fourth in the European competition, as I like to call it, and fifth place in the World Cup in terms of government services. So we've been moving very fast. We are small, but we are nimble, and our focus has been on listening to the users. So our focus has been, I guess I could mention three things. Branding, to build trust, to have a simple message out there so people understand what you're saying, because a lot of government talk can be very complicated, written by lawyers, and they expect everybody to understand what you're saying and doing. So talking about inclusivity. We have a unique tender. So we are very focused on how we buy IT. So we're trying to be really responsible so we can move really fast. And we work really closely with the private sector. So in our case, we are working with 20 external teams at Digital Iceland. It's from 14 private companies. So we just roll out projects, work really fast to be able to prevent lock-in situations, which is something that we are probably all very familiar with. And this also includes, helps us with innovation and things like that. And then we've always had, it's just about 4 years ago that we started on this road with this vision that we have. And I guess being able to focus on, because we've been talking a lot about policy, and I know everybody loves policy very much, but we've been going action before policy. So we had a clear vision. We're going to simplify people's lives in Iceland. So that's our vision. That's how we approach every project that we look at. From there, we started working. We started figuring out what works and what not. We're agile. We change things. We listen to the customer. We adapt. We go back and try until we perfect things. Then we write the policy. Then we know what the policy should be about. So I guess, being positive, it's been really working really well for us. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Really interesting, because in Germany they were saying one of the things holding them back is maybe they didn't start with that clear vision, and you've summarised yours really well. Simplifying people's lives, you start with that, and then you can work out the policy to get there. But, I did ask for positives as well as the challenges, and you've said there, listen to users, build trust, keep it simple. I like that, the language so the public can understand, and then work with the private sector as well as having that vision. So lots of positive lessons that you've learned. And again, I said this about Singapore. If you haven't had a chance to see what Iceland are doing on digital services, it is pretty spectacular. So it's definitely worth having a look. Tom, over to you.
And with that, I wanted to inflate your ego. Iceland also has the most beautiful government website in the world.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. Just keep flirting.
So not now, because I'm going to say fascinating things. But if you go to island.is, I think it is,
yeah.
island like an island.is, it is just beautiful. Anyway, so in the UK, the things that work in digital transformation, I think, are quite well rehearsed, and they're things we've been talking about for a decade, but they still hold true. So doing digital transformation in-house, having multidisciplinary teams, so having cybersecurity, engineering, product, design, all in the same teams, and policy, ideally in the same teams, and operations, that really is the way that you get proper product built. And we see again and again when people revert back to those patterns of just outsourcing a solution, writing requirement documents before they've done user research, it just doesn't work, right? So I think we've been saying this for a long time, but it does keep being proven in the UK government context. The challenges are also the ones we've talked about for a long time. So it's really hard to recruit people and pay them properly. Our procurement is set up to incentivize waterfall and actively set up to stop you doing agile. Same with finance, where there's lots and lots of capital to invest and very little ongoing. So I think we know all this. The thing that I'm really interested in at the moment, though, in terms of what makes it hard, is I think we haven't always defined what a service is very well. And so what we've ended up doing in the UK in some situations is we've digitized silos really well. And you told a really nice personal story. Last year I was helping an elderly man to try to get benefits from the government. He had fallen on hard times. He needed help from the government to pay his rent. And what was really interesting is he didn't know what that benefit was called. He just knew he needed help. And even our beautiful, Chris runs gov.uk, our beautiful single government website with loads of really well curated, not as beautiful as yours, but really well curated information, really well written. Each benefit service is well designed, but you need to understand the structure of our benefits agency and the structure of government before you can understand what you want to apply for. And so fundamentally, I think the next generation of digital services need to hide the entire complexity of government And it's a hard message for federal employees because it's not about your department. Your department needs to be invisible to the user. That's what I think. I told you we'd disagree a little bit, maybe.
But if I can grab that, because I completely agree. And if you go to our beautiful website, you will see where we have started approaching things from life events, because we all go through from life to death. We go through life events, and we don't want to be experts in how the government works.
Exactly.
So we need to be able to go somewhere if we don't have backup at home, read information, on how things work. And we try and explain this to agencies we work with. And for example, just learning how to drive in Iceland, there are 3 agencies. There's a driving instructor, there's a student, there's the parent who is helping, there's a driving school. It's crazy. And just by putting everything, just approaching it through life events, we can both, in the back, simplify how the system works, because 3 agencies is just crazy. I bet it's something similar here. But we can explain how things work. And learning how to drive, for example, in Iceland now is completely digital from start till finish, until you get your digital driver's license. So everything is online. You don't have to have your pamphlet for a year while you're learning how to drive and remember to get the stamps somewhere and not lose. When you're 16 and not lose a piece of paper, it's difficult. It is. It's difficult even though you're 47. So I think it's an excellent point. And that's how, again, with accessibility, how we approach people where they are. You don't really, if you want to get married, you really don't care what the institution is called.
So I am gonna come to the audience in a minute, because I'm sure we've got lots of questions, but I do want to pick up on, you've all really alluded to this sense of we serve from birth to death. There are all these different agencies. We need to be more joined up. People don't really care which agency they're dealing with. So what do we actually mean by digital transformation? Are we talking about creating those nice websites? Or are we talking about a massive amount of work that has to go on behind the scenes to make sure that all of those things are joined up? And if that's what we're really talking about, as much as beautiful websites are nice, we want all that work to be done behind the scenes. How do we do that? Who pays for it? Who's in charge of it? Who's in charge of any one digital project when you might have, say, 10 agencies or 10 departments involved in having to do things? So I'll come back to you, Jonathan, on that.
Yeah, and I want to say one last thing on the discussion that we just had. And if you've heard myself or others from our team speak on this, you'll have heard us say you shouldn't have to know how to know. And I think that gets at the discussion that we just had there. On that question, I think that the answer is we have to think about the full picture. This cannot just be about building good-looking websites. It has to be what happens behind the scenes that allow a great public-facing application to serve a user in a better way. And I think as far as how we do that, it's really about making sure that we've got different functions talking to each other. At a lot of your agencies, I imagine that you might have one group who owns the words on the page, and a different group who owns the technology on the back end, and maybe yet a different group who owns some specific application that you've rolled out on that given website or on that given page. And the only way that this works and that we were able to reap the full benefit of what digitization can bring is when those different functions are talking and working in a coordinated function. So as our team has thought about rolling out some of our policies in this space, we've been really deliberate in trying to break down some of those silos and make sure that the right groups are at the table and talking to each other.
Thanks, Jonathan. Betsy, would you agree with that? Is actually what we're talking about not to do with technology really at all? That's the end bit. It's to do with silos, people, bureaucracy, culture.
All of the above, yes. And that's exactly, in fact, why my office was formed at the Social Security Administration last year, was to be looking at very critical customer-facing initiatives that cross all functions, because I came in from Silicon Valley, kind of coming in saying, wow, yeah, tech, I see tech everywhere, and everybody wants to talk about the tech and talk about it as a project and we need to think about it more as products and also as services. Again, we're a service organization. We need to think about these things end to end as products and services. I mean, a quick example, we recently rolled out nationally an e-signature capability. Well, I mean, this took everything to do, and I know some of you were thinking, wow, yay you, like we've been doing this for a while. But to do this again in this environment where there's an executive order on customer experience that in fact frames some of that so that we're not just doing digital signatures, we're saying, maybe there are some forms that you shouldn't have to sign at all. Let's make it even easier. Let's do that simplification. So that's part of it. We've had to bring in, our policy teams, our technical teams, operations, everyone in the same room every 2 weeks, virtual rooms mostly, but to really look at how do we get this capability out there, and then really taking a lot of work from our CX team, our UX team before, during, and after the launch to figure out, are we doing what the customers actually want? I mean, we literally have a funnel from customer inputs that says, here's where we're losing people by percentage, and let's go after each of those places. So we're not even close to done. But at the same time, it has taken all of those pieces to make, a function like that happen again across such a large territory and such a large area. So
I really like what you say about using the process to, do you even need to do that bit? Do you need people to sign that? So actually don't just digitalize the process, make the process better.
Yes, let's change it completely.
Yeah. Raymond, your thoughts looking in and working with the public sector, do they join up enough? Like what's going on behind the scenes?
Do they join up enough? Enough for what is the question, right? So I'll just, in full disclosure, I grew up as a software engineer. My first real job was building software for Social Security Administration, believe it or not, about 1,000 years ago. And I would always say that when you build software, if it's good and effective, you get to the essence of human behavior. I mean, every one of us, if you do not have a piece of digital technology on you right now, raise your hand. Anybody? We all do, right? I mean, think about the last time, one person in the back.
There's a person there.
Think about the last time you did not have digital stuff within your reach. Like for me, it was in the shower this morning. But for many of us, you got a smartwatch, like you got it on the shower, right? So it really comes down to where the technology touches you and makes a difference in your life. That's what I think of with digital. And for government agencies, we have the pleasure of helping 340 million people every year. And you've got to do both. You've got to be thinking about the user first with a human-centered design. You've got to be agile to adapt. And the details matter. If you go to a website and you can't find where you don't know what you're supposed to do, or you're trying to navigate an organization artificially in a website, that makes a difference. And if it doesn't work for you, you feel that and you will remember that for the rest of your life. And so it's a holistic thing. And the agencies that we see really doing it well are focused on three things. One of them is the total experience. And one of the things that they focus on is being simple, being seamless, and being secure. Right? Those are things that 10 years from now, we're all going to know. We want the sites that we go to, the services we interact with, to be simpler, to be secure, and to be seamless. And that's kind of the area where I see agencies that are being successful really leaning in.
Thanks.
My question there, can I ask a question? Is it that
I think you're going to anyway.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize. Isn't that where we're supposed to be right now? Isn't that what our customers, our users are expecting? Exactly these things right now, not 10 years from now.
Yeah. So the point is that the focus, sometimes people focus on things that are changing. What new technology is here, what new policy is here. But enduring value is focused on what are the things that are not going to change. They're true today, they're going to be true 10 years from now, they're going to be true 20 years from now. Those are the areas where as organizations and partners, we can lean in and know that we're going to have sustaining change.
And I think Vigdís has got a point there. I think when you have things that you've bought, for example, a product, you want it to be simple, seamless, secure. You want the private sector things that you engage in to be all of those things. I think increasingly people expect that from their public services as well. Vigdís and Tom, I'm going to phrase it in a slightly different way. You can talk about all that work behind the scenes, but I just want to make sure we're putting some more positives out there. Have you got any examples of where you think all this is working well, where all that transformation has happened behind the scenes? Tom, I'll start with you, and then I'll come to Vigdís.
Bring it.
I've got a little story. It's not about the UK, though. So
It's about Iceland.
It's not about Iceland. It's not all about Iceland. But it is about Europe, which is next to the UK.
Oh.
A couple of months ago, I was lucky enough to have dinner with the digital minister in Denmark. Are there any Danes in the room? I don't think there are.
We're back.
Long way.
Back.
Hi. Of course, yeah. So I was with the Danish digital minister, and I was talking about one of the projects GDS is working on at the moment, which is genuinely really cool, which is a form builder thing.
She's also for equality, right?
She's also
Digital
for equality.
and equality.
She's about 30.
So
She's
cool.
a genius. Anyway, she's amazing. So I was talking about this amazing product we've got, where we've got this long tail of inaccessible PDFs on gov.uk. It's like long tail of these services that are just really difficult for people to use. And so my team has built a form builder that takes a PDF and turns it into a proper, accessible, using our design system web product. And it's really cool, and we're rolling it out at pace. And I was quite pleased with myself. And then she was being very polite in that sort of Scandi way and said, why do people have to fill in forms? Do you not know about them already? And it was a really chastening question, because what she meant, and if I look at what I've done just this morning, I'm trying to think what I've done. So we got an Uber because we were late. I didn't have to tell Uber who I was or what my bank account was or anything. Like, it just knows, right? I bought something on Amazon this morning for my daughter back in the UK because she'd forgotten a thing for school. And I checked my bank to work out how much I've spent on coffee since I've been here. And my point is, the design patterns are already there, right? These are hyper-personalized services and ideally proactive. Like, Uber was sending to me alerts this morning saying you probably want a taxi, and it was right. Government should work like that, I think. Government should be personalized and proactive.
Interesting.
You just got to integrate the data.
I am
going to
come to Vigdís on a good case, an example from Iceland, but I think on that issue, maybe the public don't trust the government in the same way they trust Amazon and they trust Uber to give their personal data. We can come back to that.
Maybe we haven't offered them the choice yet.
Maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe. Vigdís, you're a good example of something, of the millions of things that are obviously going well in Iceland. What would you like to let us know today?
I think it's definitely the way we can communicate, both internally with the teams, with the public. It's built the trust that we have, so we've earned the trust by showing them that we mean what we say and we do what we say as well. So an example is where we've run into trouble. There's a movie quote, a lack of communication, but where we've run into trouble within larger agencies that are working with us, we created a day program we call Digital Leaders, and we challenge the agencies to invite up to 15 digital leaders internally that are project managers, top down, bottom up, just a very diverse group, just so they can communicate within a room. We share with them everything that we're doing. This is our, what we can assist you with. This is the lingo that we're working with, and just show them under the hood. Every time we do this, even though it's people from the same agency, they often never met. But they're working together on the same projects and even side by side in different buildings, doing the same thing. And they're sharing things, and they say, oh, there's an API. I can. That information is already there. I just asked somebody to build that for me. So the lack of communication. If that would be the only thing that we would do, is just communicate and talk bottom up, and I think that would solve a lot of things.
Yeah. Thanks, Vigdís.
Most definitely.
Huge emphasis on the need for communication and better collaboration across units. Okay, we have 20 minutes for questions. Who would like to kick off with a question? I'm going to make sure that I do the whole room. I think we've got a question down here. Do we have a second? Yeah, and we've got a gentleman over there. So if we can take these two questions first. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gigi Frias. I'm the director of CX at Pixel. We're a consultancy. And I've seen this over and over again, this competition for resources internally in agencies, and these silos which are at odds in terms of priority with each other. What is the best advice you would give an agency to try to overcome that? Because I find the governance is always missing, and it's like who owns this piece, or who owns the content versus the app versus the technology, and therefore it creates a barrier to collaboration.
Thank you. So competing for resources, breaking down silos and ownership. Park that, because I'll take the second question, and you can decide which one you answer.
Hi, Dominic Campbell, British but living in DC recently at Georgetown. My question's really around where this responsibility lies for institutional reform. And you can see it increasingly. I was previously CDO of the equivalent of HUD in the UK, Homes England, and I position myself not as Chief Digital Officer, but as Chief Organizational Design Officer, and tried to take it into that place of policy, organization, design and structure, and technology. But I don't see much of that happening. And so there's not a great deal of institutional reform for the 21st century to truly build efficient, lean organizations going on. It's a lot of lipstick on the pig while the pig is moving, and not doing so much on that.
Thank you. So two related questions. I love those questions because they build on what we're saying. So how do you break down those silos, stop people competing and increase collaboration? But also back to what we were saying before, I think, who's in charge of institutional reform? And is that the best way to get into transformation? Tom, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, the really good questions, and I don't think there's a single answer. Where I've seen it work well is where you have this service owner model, and you have where you have policy, operations, digital, all in one place, because the incentives are aligned. So everybody's trying to, if you build a digital service, well, if you do policy, but then you're not responsible for implementing that in an agency, like you do a policy and then your border force are having to implement it, or a prison service having to implement it, you don't have an incentive to make the policy workable. And in the same way, if you build digital services, and you don't have to support the end product, throw it over the fence to ops, you don't have incentives. So I think having a single person responsible for the digital, non-digital, and operational things works really well. I think the incentives point is the same for who's overall accountable for change. I think what we've done really badly in the UK, potentially elsewhere, is we talk too much in our buzzy, fun digital lingo, and we don't talk in language that ministers, that politicians understand. I remember one politician told me a couple of years ago, am I breaking rules here? He basically said, I really back what you're doing, but there are no votes in digital transformation in government. And what I realized is I'd completely screwed up explaining it, because it wasn't about digital transformation. It was about building trust in his constituency. It was about making government cheaper. It was about making people feel like government's working for them. But I'd couched it in digital. So I think it comes down to our elected officials, but we need to educate them better on the benefits, I think.
The language. When you mentioned policy, operational, and digital people working together, I noticed that Jonathan and Betsy looked at each other as if wouldn't that be lovely, or it was, well, we're doing that. So I'm going to ask both of you: is that the ideal? Are you trying to do that? Is it working?
Yeah, I think there's very much still an open question on our end on how do we best structure around this work. The model that Tom described is in place in some agencies, and it's not in place at others. I think where we're trying to push, though, is regardless of your org structure, we should be able to work with each other. And the first question was got at, how do you ensure that there aren't competing priorities, that different parts of an agency aren't competing for the same resources. And I think probably the best way to try to tackle that is you need to show the different folks what their role in it is, and actually do the hard work to articulate, here's how the folks running the call centers fit in. Here's how the folks in the technology organizations fit in. Here's how the content designers fit in. Here's how the user researchers fit in. And that's not easy. It's not as easy as just saying, you 5 people start talking. You need to do the work to show how those different voices need to be at the table. And then once you get them there, I think that's when you begin to unlock some of the potential here. And again, that can and I think should happen regardless of what your organizational structure is at a given time.
Thanks, Jonathan. Betsy, do you agree with that?
Yeah, and when I heard those 2 questions, I thought it's interesting. There's kind of the same answer to both, but it's sort of paradoxical. On the one hand, leadership matters, right? Whether you're talking about priorities or working together, that matters. It also matters, though, to flip it completely. That's the paradoxical part. We all own it, right? And I think part of what good leadership does as well is make sure it's clear that throughout the organization, you own the outcome. I think sometimes, you mentioned policy a bunch, and sometimes policy people can think about the policy and get enamored with it, but not actually drive that all the way to the ground where somebody is getting served with a government service, whether it's digital or analog. And so I do think that, again, we all own it, and we all need to own it for our actual customers. And at the same time, though, to put those resources together in a smart way and get good governance, you do need leadership to be driving that. And I agree with you, what you said, Tom. It isn't just, ooh, cool digital, right? It's got to be, what are we trying to do? What's our mission? And then here's better ways to deliver that mission. And I think we all need to own it.
Thanks. Raymond and then Vigdís.
That leadership matters thing, that is so true, because the clients that we have, that we've seen change and collaborate really well, they put it all out there. They say, hey, this is where we're going. I have a client right now, we meet every 2 weeks to help work with their 3 to 5 year strategy. And she's making it clear where she wants to go. And she's saying, hey, wait a minute, these groups are naturally aligned with us, and those groups, hey, we're going to have to work with them to figure out how we're going to work together, because they're doing something kind of similar. We might be able to join in some areas. We might not be able to partner in other areas. But up front, everyone knows, hey, we're going to get this done together. And so sometimes, the other thing I would say is also sometimes that competition isn't always bad, competition for resources, because I had a client who was a general officer, and one of the things he would do is he would ask 2 different groups to attack the same problem. And the reason why he would do that is because those 2 groups had different responses, different answers, but they knew that there were other people trying to find the same thing, so that that competition really was on their behind to keep them moving, keep them innovating. So those are the things I would say is the organizations I see doing it really well, the leaders are upfront about here's where we're going and here's where we're going to collaborate. And then the other thing is sometimes that competition kind of use the advantage of it to move a little bit faster.
Managed competition in that respect. Vigdís, did you want to add anything either on kind of...
Yeah, I think I would want to go both back to the communication part, because if people don't understand what you're saying, they're not going to trust what you're doing. And that's part of what we've been trying to make everybody understand, that there's a lingo in every group of friends, in every workplace, just about everywhere. In terms of how we can make this work, as I mentioned earlier, we have people from 14 private companies that are working for us. And we didn't expect that to work in the beginning. And what we managed to do is make them feel like they're part of the national team. They have a higher purpose in simplifying people's lives. And they are looking at each other's work. And they're not criticizing in a bad way, but they're supporting each other. And it's the weirdest thing that happens when you put people in one room and get them talking, even though they're from different sides. They start trusting each other, and they start helping each other. And I would just want to put real emphasis on that, just being really honest and going out there and communicate what you're having a clear vision. And in terms of leadership, being a leader in Iceland, it's kind of what we would say is, oh, that sounds very American. And that's why I named the theme of the day where we're teaching people, it's you learn how to become a digital leader, because that's what people have been advertising for constantly the past couple of years. And I kept thinking, what what criteria does a digital leader have? And I also named it for my former boss because his title was digital leader, because I told him one day you're just going to be my leader, because digital is something that's just given. So I'm just going to start calling you my leader now. But again, it's what the words you use, they matter, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Thank you. Lots of that. Okay, we've got lots of hands up. I said I would come over here. Do we have any over here? I want to make sure I'm including everybody in the room. No? I guess all the people that wanted to ask the questions are all sat here in the centre. So we've got a lady down here and then a lady here. I'll take these two and then the gentleman there. So we've got 3 questions here. We'll take you first and then we'll take those 2 together after, just for efficiency.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Florence Casule. I am Director of Procurement for the U.S. Digital Service. You cannot get away from procurement
No.
when it comes to anything digital service or digital transformation or anything IT within government here in the U.S. I'm curious what you would say about what the conditions are, the ideal conditions are for public-private collaboration in order to actually have positive outcomes.
Okay. So procurement and creating good partnerships. I mean, Tom, you're nodding away here. Would you like to go first on that one?
Sigh. So the reason I'm sighing, the problem that I've found with procurement, and actually quite recently, is a lot of the way that government procurement is traditionally set up is more for building bridges and submarines than it is for building software. So we have some amazing procurement people that we work with, but even the best people, they often come back to, they like fixed contracts, fixed price contracts, whereas that is anti-agile, because you can only do a fixed contract if you know what the problem is and you've got the requirements up front, which means you're not actually designing around users, around humans. So that is a conflict. They also like quite long contracts so that you can sort of get value over a longer period. That means you're locked into a supplier and you have this model that is, it's more like you're in prison than you're in a hotel. You want to be in a hotel where you can choose to pay the next day and stay another night, rather than a prison where you're waiting for the contract to end and you want to escape. So these are the problems. The solution, as ever, is education and making the procurement people really feel part of the team. I think, Claire, you said a thing yesterday, sorry, I spotted you in the one. I think it was you yesterday who said something along the lines of, people who feel like they're part of creating the solution, they will feel engaged in it. They will want to commit to it. Whereas if you make people the problem, they're not going to commit to the solution. So I think rather than, it's very easy being on stage and going, it's all procurement people's fault. I think it needs to be a collaboration as well.
It's fun because you talk about bringing other professions in, and maybe still procurement professionals get overlooked.
I think so.
The last people to remember to bring in the room. We do have lots of other questions.
Sorry, we were really innovative in that sense, how procurement is made in Iceland, and we did go to the procurement people who get all sorts of cool ideas as well, and we can have a talk later on that. But that was on the project. So the way we did it was for a period of time with our 20 teams in terms of, and they're able to hand things over. So it's all about how you set it up and thinking a little bit open-minded and a little bit differently. But that rolls really well, and they're all working really well together.
I will go to other questions, but I feel like, Raymond, I should give you, from the other side.
So it's interesting you mentioned procurement, because the prison, right, and the hotel, I'll tell you what I love to see, and I think agencies that have adopted this have gotten good results, is when you lean in on show me, don't just tell me. Because in the industry, we've gotten really good at putting words together. And we actually, now we don't even need humans to put the words together. We can use tools to help put some of those words together. And when you have, for example, a statement of objectives, and you have a code challenge, where you've got to pull together a team to collaborate, and then you get to explain why you made certain decisions and why you did this and why you did that, that really makes it clear who's being successful and who's not. And that requires a different kind of lens, a different way of approaching that contract. And as you know better than I do, some agencies are better at writing those statements of objectives and having the technical talent to evaluate and ask the right questions. So that's variable. And I would say in terms of building software and building solutions, that's one of the trends that I see that really is getting good results if you're able to do it.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. So we had two questions. I'm going to take them both because we're running short on time. So there's a lady here and then the gentleman behind.
My question is a little bit collaborative. So you had mentioned, sir, that getting the stakeholders together is an important part of this whole step, obviously, for digital transformation. And several of you had mentioned, of course, this is the case, but you have to do the procurement, you have to do the various pieces. There's natural segmentation in procurement. It's natural stovepiping that happens. You said, for example, that the software guys have to do the software piece. There's no real incentive for the people who actually are getting the procurement to essentially collaborate with the guy next, the guy that's doing the business intelligence piece and the guy who's actually doing the requirements gathering piece, et cetera. And how does a complicated organization like Social Security Administration bring together that collaboration and communication where the vendor is actually not feeling threatened and wants to protect their wall and essentially trying to bring that forward to a more collaborative environment? It's hard because people want to make money, yeah?
So bringing together the issues around procurement, creating silos, and what we've said about the need to join up. So great question. And then I'm going to take this one as well.
Hi, Jeremy Zittimer. I'm an equity practitioner at U.S. Digital Service. So my question is about outcomes. So Tom and Betsy, I really appreciate what you both mentioned about, it's not about digital transformation, it's about building trust, it's about the outcomes for our constituency. Betsy, you mentioned owning the outcome. We talked about we're serving the public from birth to death. At the end of the day, the public sector is here to make sure that the outcomes of the public are improved. That's not just the moment that they happen to interact with a website, it's the extent to which they are healthy, wealthy, and safe. Right, but there are within these large agencies, no individual team necessarily owns that outcome. They own perhaps like the number of people who adopt the platform, the number of data points over the wire. They don't own to what extent people are healthy, wealthy, and safe. How do you make sure that these large agencies are owning that outcome and keeping that outcome for the public top of mind, even when nobody is incentivized to own it?
Wow, that's a big question to end on. So, huge question. How do you measure performance? I'm going to rephrase. We've got 3 minutes for 5 of you. How do you measure performance, not just in terms of your digital transformation project or product, but are you meeting that bigger goal of making people's lives better? You've got 30 seconds each, Jonathan. And also, don't forget how to, in that 30 seconds, how do you simplify procurement as well?
The clock's right here, too. Okay. I want to piggyback on something that Betsy said earlier around how we all have to own it. And I think to the question of how do we make sure that we're delivering outcomes, I think we do that more when customer experience and service delivery is one-to-one with mission delivery. It shouldn't be a piece part of what we do. It should be everything we do. And we need to be laser focused on that. My 30 seconds are up, so I will pass to the next. But I think it is as much about the way we think about it and shifting our mindset as it is about the tools, the technologies, the websites that we build to help get us there.
Thanks, Jonathan. Betsy.
Yeah, and I think, we're big organizations and all have human resources functions, and that's a part of the answer, right? Just like procurement needs to be part of owning that actual outcome, the more we can make sure that our human resources plans, our performance plans, we're making moves to make sure that customer experience and our core actual top 3 service priorities are part of those. And until you do that, I just don't think you can really get the alignment that you need throughout the organization.
Thanks.
Yeah, to answer one of your questions about the procurement, one area where I was talking about some of the competition not being a bad thing, it being a good thing, the offices that run these contract vehicles compete for business, right? They compete to have the organizations run their projects through for their procurement. And so the way they do that is by making it easy for the people that are managing those programs and the business users across the government to use that vehicle. The ones that are easy to use, that they're responsive, those are the ones that get more business, right? The last thing I would say in my last 10 seconds is it really is not about the technology. The details matter, but it really is about what are you trying to do for the people. And you find across government that there are individual cohorts that are similar. So researchers at Department of Energy have some of the same challenges that researchers at NIH have. And so one of the ways that they measure whether or not their projects are successful is how long is it taking a new researcher to onboard, right? Because that's something that is painful for them. That slows research. That research is what goes into impacting all of our lives. But that's an example of a mission-based metric that I see working well.
Thanks, Raymond.
Yeah, about people, not tech.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was just about to say that. You put it in much nicer words, but it's about people, not tech. And if people understand you and trust you, again, that's going to make it work. And approaching things from life events is also something that people can get behind, because we all go through something in life and we can relate to it, and it comes from our hearts, even though it doesn't matter if you're in procurement or if you're a software developer or whatever. We all have ourselves or have been trying to assist a loved one go through something. Losing a loved one is something that's really difficult, and in that moment we really need to have all the information at hand and how we're going to go about it, because we are not in a state of mind to make rash decisions in that sense. So approaching through life events and explaining to our leaders, our political leaders as well, because they're always telling a story. They are telling their people a story of how they change people's lives. So through life events is something I would recommend you approach things.
Thanks, Tom. I know it's hard because you're the last one, but anything to add?
So I won't touch it. So the real answer, I think, is that most governments are structured wrong, and they're structured for a pre-internet age, and so we should fundamentally restructure how the agencies work. If you're not going to do that, then at least we need to start promoting customer-centric, service-centric digital people into the most senior leadership positions.
Fantastic. So we've ended this session on saying we need to think again and fundamentally restructure government. I'm sure you'll join me. What a lovely session. Really enjoyed that one. Please join me in a warm round of applause. Thank you so much, everybody. Just to say, we're starting again in 10 minutes' time, so 3:10. In here, it will be accelerating DX across government, and I will be running over to the other room to do safety first, building cyber security by design. Thanks so much, everyone.